It's truly one of the most baffling cold cases in history. You've got a perfectly dressed man found dead on a quiet Australian beach. No ID, zero witnesses, and just a series of clues that seem to go nowhere. A secret code, a rare book of poetry, and a single cryptic phrase. For over 70 years, he was known only as the Somerton Man. But this is the story of how modern science finally gave him back his name.
Okay, so let's set the scene. The story starts right here, on December 1st, 1948, at Somerton Park Beach just outside Adelaide, South Australia. The body of a man is discovered, propped up against the seawall. His legs were crossed, his head resting back. It looked like he was just asleep. In fact, people who saw him the night before just thought he was a man enjoying the evening air. There were absolutely no signs of a struggle.
But the moment police arrived, the mystery began to unfold. First off, no wallet, no identification of any kind. And then, here's the really strange part. Every single label had been carefully, methodically cut from his clothing, his jacket, his trousers, even his tie. It was a deliberate act of erasure. So right away the police had a body, but they had absolutely no name.
And the initial investigation, well, it only made things more confusing, revealing a man who was not only physically unusual, but was also carrying a pretty bizarre collection of items.
The pathologist's report was fascinating. It noted he was in top physical condition. His hands were smooth, no calluses, so definitely no signs of manual labor. But his feet and legs were odd. He had these wedge-shaped toes and really high muscular calves, which led to this early theory that maybe he was a ballet dancer. You see, this was no ordinary guy.
So what did he have in his pockets? It was a weird mix. An unused train ticket, a used bus ticket, a pack of gum. But when you look closer, things get strange. The comb was American-made, which was pretty rare in Australia back then. And the cigarettes were a real head-scratcher. A cheap Army Club packet, but filled with more expensive Kenzita cigarettes. Now that's the reverse of what people usually did. It really suggests someone trying to keep a low profile.
Pretty soon, the investigation had to expand beyond the body on the beach. And that led to a suitcase and eventually the one clue that would make this case absolutely legendary.
So about 6 weeks later, a brown suitcase turns up in the cloakroom at the Adelaide railway station. It had been checked in on November 30th, the day before the body was found. And just like the man's clothes, the suitcase's label had been completely removed.
Inside, you guessed it, more clothes with the labels cut out and a few sharpened tools. But two clues really stood out. First, a card of orange wax thread from the brand Barbour, a type you couldn't even get in Australia at the time. It was a perfect match for the thread used to repair the man's trousers. This was his suitcase, no doubt. And second, a name, T. Keane, found on a tie in a laundry bag. Was this finally his identity?
But just as investigators were hitting a dead end with the name Keane, the case took a legendary turn. Months after the discovery, a pathologist is re-examining the man's trousers and finds a tiny rolled-up scrap of paper hidden deep in a concealed fob pocket. On it were just two printed words, Tamám Shud. Library officials quickly identified the phrase. It was Persian, from the final page of the Rubaiyats of Omar Khayyam, a famous collection of poems, and its meaning, it is over or it is finished. Wow. The case instantly transformed from just an unidentified body into this profound literary mystery. Was this a suicide note? A secret message? What did it mean? A public appeal then led police to the exact copy of the book that the scrap was torn from. And what they found inside just deepened the enigma, connecting it all to a secret code and a mysterious local woman. In the back of that book, police found these faint indentations, 5 lines of capital letters. It looked for all the world like a complex cipher, a secret code, and for decades it would resist every single attempt at decryption by military experts and amateur codebreakers alike. In fact, by 1978, cryptographers from Australia's Department of Defense pretty much gave up. They concluded it was likely unsolvable. Either it was too short to find a key, or, as they put it was simply the meaningless product of a disturbed mind. But there was something else in the book that was perfectly clear. An unlisted phone number. It belonged to a young nurse named Jessica Thompson, who lived in Glenelg, less than half a kilometer from where the body was found. Now that's a lead. So detectives go to see Jessica Thompson, and they show her a plaster cast of the man's face. Her reaction was, well, it was shocking. According to the police report, she was completely taken aback and looked as if she was about to faint. She denied knowing him, but her behavior suggested something else entirely, and she remained a person of interest for the rest of her life.
So you've got all these tantalizing leads, the code, the poetry, the nurse. But despite all of that, the case just went cold. For over 70 years, the Somerton man's identity remained one of Australia's greatest unsolved mysteries.
The years just turned into decades. The inquest back in 1949 determined he was likely poisoned, but they couldn't prove it. And then, nothing. Decades passed with no new information until we get to the 21st century, when a whole new generation of investigators and incredible technology finally took on the case.
The breakthrough, when it finally came, didn't come from cracking that code or from some deathbed confession. No, it came from the incredible science of genetic genealogy.
And this process is just brilliant. Researchers led by a Professor Derek Abbott found strands of the man's hair embedded in that original plaster cast from 1949. From those hairs, they managed to extract a DNA profile. By uploading it to genealogical databases, they found distant relatives, which allowed them to build this massive family tree of over 4,000 people and then meticulously trace the branches all the way back to one single person. And in July 2022, after 74 years of silence, the Somerton man finally had a name: Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker from Melbourne.
So, the big question: who was Carl Webb? And how does his real-life story solve all the strange riddles that surrounded his death for so long?
Well, with Webb's identity, all those strange clues suddenly started to click into place. The Keane clothing? They were likely hand-me-downs from his brother-in-law, a man named Thomas Keane. His interest in the Rubaiyat? Well, his estranged wife mentioned he enjoyed writing poetry, often on the subject of death. And that mysterious code? Turns out he liked to bet on horses, so it may have just been a shorthand for horse names. Even his distinct physique was explained. He played community football, which would account for those muscular cows.
The story that emerged wasn't some tale of international espionage, but one of personal tragedy. Webb's wife, Dorothy, had actually left him in 1947, a year before his death. She described him as a solitary, moody, and at times violent man. After they separated, he just vanished from all the official records. He became a ghost long before he actually died. So we now have his name, and we have the outline of his life. But the ultimate questions, they still remain. Why was he in Adelaide? Was his death suicide, or was it something else? And what were his final thoughts on that lonely stretch of beach? We may have found the man, but the deepest parts of his mystery might just be gone forever. Is the case truly finished? Tamám Shud? Honestly, that's a question we may never be able to answer.